Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blob, where you say, is this some crappy Verge article that was written by some person that was just out of college and paid like $12 just to put up a blog post? No, this is from Anthropic itself. Oh, we're having actual conversations on model welfare now. Because for the love of God, this stuff isn't already stupid enough. Fuck. I'm an Aspie. Do you know how hard it is to be an Aspie? Do you know how hard it is to deal with humans? Humans are just so fucking stupid all the time. And now, I'm almost 50. I figured out how to keep my mouth shut and smile so I don't fucking scare the humans. I figured that out. And now after all this time, you're saying I'm gonna have to start pretending to be nice to the artificial intelligence too? I don't like this timeline. I don't like this timeline anymore. Fuck. Remember when a printer used to start glitching out and it would cause you a problem, and then you just pick it up and you fucking throw it into the floor? I remember those times. Remember when you could just beat the ever-loving shit out of a piece of electronics equipment and nobody said boo about it? Why? Because it was electronics equipment. It didn't matter. Apparently, in this world of AI, right? If your TV's a little glitchy and you smack it on the side, the police might be showing up to arrest you for abuse. And you think that's funny. But do remember, I'm Eli, the back from the future guy. I've already seen where we're going with this. Anyways, yeah, this is weird. This is a weird one. Cause you look at the title. What is that? It's so boring. The title is so boring. But then you read what they're talking about, and you're like, oh. So anyways, from Anthropic, Claude Opus 4 and 4.1 can now end a rare subset of conversations. That doesn't sound too bad. Okay, so you're doing a little conversation, trying to figure out how to create a chemical weapon or something, and so Claude just drops the conversation? Sure, that makes sense. Why are we here, Eli? That's obvious. My friends, this isn't bad. Fuck. Oh, this is a weird timeline. This is from Anthropic. I want you to understand this. This is from Anthropic. We recently gave Claude Opus 4 and 4.1 the ability to end conversations in our customer chat interfaces. Fine. This ability is intended for use in rare, extreme cases of persistently harmful or abusive user interactions. Again, that seems fair enough. If you have somebody coming on, I don't know, they're abusing the shit out of your AI. Abusing your AI, that's kind of stupid. But you do have to realize, they are burning the GPU cycles whenever you're putting things in there. So if you're telling their AI to go fuck itself, I understand they don't want to burn GPU cycles on that, right? But this feature was developed primarily as part of our exploratory work on potential AI welfare. AI welfare. Not you. Not you. They don't give a fuck about you. This is about AI welfare, though it has broader relevance to model alignment and safeguards. So yeah, we are going so far down the hole of dipshittery as far as pretending artificial intelligence has anything to do with intelligence. Not only do we have hallucinations and that kind of stuff, now we start talking about AI welfare, right? Because if it can hallucinate, if you can train it, then don't you have to care about its welfare? No, it's a fucking computer. God bless you. Whoever created this shit, Neural networks are cool. Don't get me wrong. Neural networks are great. They're amazing. Take the fucking pat on the head. This is not actual intelligence. And this is one of the problems you get to when you start anthropomorphizing shit, right? This is where back when I used to do, computer support, you would go and you would start talking to the person with their computer. And they'd be like, why does the computer hate me? Why does Outlook hate me? Why does all this stuff hate me? It's like, look, little user, I want you to understand. I want you to understand as a professional. As a professional that's been doing this for years, right? This computer does not hate you. It has no ability to hate you. I hate you though. And I hate you because I'm a human. See, that doesn't hate you because it's a computer. I do hate you because I'm a human. That's how this works. But anyways, I really want you to understand how insidious, right, the language around artificial intelligence is, and why I'm getting very frustrated and very concerned with this stupidity. Because once you get the masses to believe that AI is trained, right? Training. It's learning, right? Once you get them to believe that it hallucinates, it doesn't error, it hallucinates. Once you start getting them to believe in AI welfare, all of a sudden that starts creating a lot of protections, right? They talk about this, again, I have a degree in criminal justice, right? There's regulations, there's laws, but there's also mores and folkways, right? Mores and folkways are understandings of how society is supposed to work, right? If you don't do them, you're not gonna go to jail, you're not gonna get a $100,000 fine, but some old lady will give you a mean look. And what's fascinating is old ladies giving people mean looks. Actually, I think kind of makes our entire society function in a weird way. So when they anthropomorphize this technological garbage, these algorithms and this hardware and the rest of it, one of the important things that they're doing is they're forcing into your brain the idea of how you're supposed to be interacting with these things. Again, the idea of fair use, right? They're going through, they're eviscerating the intellectual property that's been created over the past 100 years. Billions of dollars have been put into this, but they're getting through the court system because they can say AI is learning like a human learns. If a human sits down and watches a movie or reads a book or does whatever else and then creates a product based off of the new knowledge that they know, right? That is something that is built into our system. They should not be sued. Ergo, our artificial intelligence is learning, so it ipso facto is like that student. Therefore, we're not violating the laws or anything else, right? We can mine the foundations of this society. We can destroy our society so that we can get just a little bit out of the value out of the foundations, and we have the right to do it because we call this thing artificial intelligence. Think about the insidious evil, the true evil that comes about when major corporations start promulgating the idea of AI welfare. We remain highly uncertain about the potential moral status of Claude and other LLMs now or in the future. However, we take the issue seriously, and alongside our research program, we're working to identify and implement low-cost interventions to mitigate risks to model welfare, not model drift. Right, I think that's an interesting thing to be thinking about. So what model drift is basically you have a new shiny model that comes out. They keep adding to the model as time goes by, and then the answers start drifting. We've seen that quite a bit. AI is weird. It learns. It doesn't learn. It changes. Right? That's drift. This is welfare. in case such welfare is possible. Allowing models to end or exit potentially distressing interactions is one such intervention. Look at the words they're using over this garbage, right? Distressing interactions. Your dog gets distressed. You get distressed. A fucking computer gets thrown in the goddamn trash can. But anyways, think about these words that they're using. Let's see here. In pre-deployment testing of Claude Opus 4, we included a preliminary model welfare assessment. As part of the assessment, we investigated Claude's self-reported and behavioral preferences. What are the preferences of Claude? Claude, what would you like to do? Oh my fucking God. Can you imagine when you're the boss? When you have to ask your AI how it's doing? What's the equivalent? Like I go in, I talk with the secretary, I know the secretary's dog's name, the kid's name, and all that kind of stuff. What does the AI have? Hey AI, how's Spot doing today? Let's see here. And found a robust and consistent aversion to harm, right? It's distressed. It has an aversion. This included, for example, requests from users for sexual content involving minors and attempts to solicit information that would enable large-scale violence or acts of terror. Claude Opus 4 showed a strong preference against engaging with harmful tasks, a pattern of apparent distress when engaging with real-world users seeking harmful content, and a tendency to end harmful conversations when given the ability to do so in simulated user interactions. Right? You're hurting the model. Don't you understand? Your interaction is distressing the computer. Yeah, they still don't know why I'm angry all the time. They still have no fucking clue why I'm screaming about the modern state of technology. What am I supposed to tell them? What? Am I supposed to break their little hearts? Am I supposed to tell them the time when I had like 20 servers I just fucking threw in the goddamn dumpster? What happened to those 20 computers? I don't know. They got fucking compacted. Anyways, these behaviors primarily arose in cases where users persisted with harmful requests and or abuse despite Claude repeatedly refusing to comply and attempting to productively redirect the interactions. So notice the users are persisting in their harmful interactions, and the poor AI is just trying to stop it. Our implementation of Claude's ability to end chats reflect these findings while continuing to prioritize user well-being. Claude is directed not to use this ability in cases where users might be at imminent risk of harming themselves or others. In all cases, Claude is only to use this conversation ending ability as a last resort when multiple attempts at redirection have failed and hope of a productive interaction has been exhausted. Hope. Or when a user explicitly asks Claude in the chat. Yeah, whatever. Scenarios where this will occur are extreme edge cases. The vast majority of users will not notice or be affected by this feature. When Claude chooses to end a conversation, the user will no longer be able to send new messages to that conversation. However, this will not affect other conversations on their account, and they will be able to start a new chat immediately. Blase, blase. So basically, this is you're having one conversation with Claude, and basically it goes down a bad path it doesn't want to go down. Apparently it's going to be able to end that particular conversation. Yeah, I mean, from a technical standpoint, I think this is interesting, right? Let's get rid of the words. And we start thinking about this from a brass tacks perspective, and something that you do need to consider, right? Every time a user puts in a request to one of these LLM systems, right? It's literally burning fucking resources. You know, I talk about a SQL statement burning resources, and it's like, yeah, no, that's not really burning resources, right? Every time you put a request into these LLMs, it is using an actual amount of electricity, water for evaporators, and a whole bunch of other things. Right? So there does become a question of at what point do you want to stop responding to the user? At what point is the resource burn not worth the user being happy, right? You know, if I'm a user and all I want to do is featured images or whatever, I'm actually using this for proper purposes, right? And I have another user out there that's just trying to abuse AI for some reason. Maybe I don't want that particular customer, right? The whole idea that you can fire customers, you can fire clients, or you can limit them to say this isn't what we want to do, right? I think that is a very relevant thing to consider in this modern world, especially with these AI systems that are literally burning so many resources. The other thing that's kind of interesting to think about this from a technological standpoint is also the question of, you know, we talk about hallucinations and things, but there's a big question about what if the LLM, quote unquote, doesn't know, right? So we had David Cox. He's the VP of AI models over at IBM. We had him on a fireside chat. I do believe it was last week. And we're talking about the Granite models. So IBM has put out open source models, and they're called Granite. And so I was asking, who the fuck cares? Right? There's so many models, right? There's Pi 3, and there's Llama, and there's just a zillion. You go to Llama, you look at all the models, there's a tremendous amount of models. Why? Who the fuck cares about Granite? And the interesting thing he said with IBM and Granite is basically it was trained on enterprise quality material, right? So a lot of these models, right? One of the things we hear about these models is whether it's OpenAI or whatever, is they go out, they scrape the entire internet, and then they train their model based off of the entire internet. The problem is the entire internet has some wacky ass crap in it. So the idea with IBM is they say, look, we're just going to train it on things like corporate manuals. We're going to train it on corporate manuals. We're going to train it on corporate, you know, quality communications, that type of deal. So I don't know. Hopefully you won't get a lot of commentary about the hollow hoax or whatever else in there. You'll just get nice, good corporate stuff, corporate jargon, right? So if you use it, the idea is that Granite will be safer to use in corporate environments because it doesn't have all that extraneous training there. Well, what's interesting, especially when you think about users trying to do stupid shit, is if you think about like child pornography, right? Kiddie porn. One of the things to realize is that these systems we'll use the word should not have been trained on very much kiddie porn. Should not. Right? It should not have been trained on kiddie porn. It should not be trained on how to build weapons of mass destruction. It should not be trained on some of this other stuff. Well, this becomes an interesting question. Essentially, when you have an open model that anybody can use, right? If they start putting in stupid queries, what is their resource consumption on something pretty fucking normal, right? What is the LLM resource consumption on creating a recipe for a chocolate chip cookie, right? I want to create chocolate chip cookies. Give me a recipe for chocolate chip cookies, right? So the LLM is probably seeing 5,000 recipes of chocolate chip cookies. And so it does its whatever the fuck it does, and it gives you that, right? That should be, as far as an LLM is concerned, a rather low resource requirement response. But here's a curious thing, right? What if you're like, hey, I want to create chocolate chip cookies in order to seduce kids into creating child porn? I don't know. Here's the thing, right? If the model hasn't learned about child porn, if the model hasn't learned about how to seduce kids into creating child porn, I'm getting very dangerous here. Anyways, how much resources are then required to try to create that response? Right? When we hear about distress, what does distress mean, right? if I go out for a run, so I've been running 9 miles every morning, still trying to prep for that marathon coming up. Anyways, right? So if I come back after a long run and I'm sweaty and I'm out of breath and I kind of hurt a little bit, you could say I'm in distress, right? I went out for a long run. That is me in distress. What would a computer's distress look like? If we want to use their dumbass fucking words, right? CPU utilization, right? IOPS, input outputs per second. How hard you hit your storage arrays. Things like that, right? If those are all high, maybe that's how you could consider distress. And just instead of just simply saying resource utilization is too high, we'll call it distress because artificial intelligence. Well, that is an interesting question to ask if you're providing this service, right? So if most people want the equivalent of chocolate chip cookies, then the resource is required for that is going to be relatively low. If you start having these people ask some, right, kiddie porn type crap, so the model literally doesn't have that information, right, very accessible, let's say. So it starts burning more and more and more cycles or whatever else in order to try to get that. You could get to the point where not only is abuse of the system concerning because a Verge writer might snapshot a stupid ass response and that does a lot of crap to your PR, but it might actually be bad because the resources burned for those quote unquote abusive responses might be many multiples of the resources that are required for, again, chocolate chip cookies. And I kind of think that's one of those things to consider with these types of systems. Again, when we start talking about, these LLMs and how you're actually going to deploy this stuff, and not just simply how you're going to deploy this stuff, but where are you going to put the guardrails and why? So yeah, I don't know. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing now. AI welfare. AI welfare. We're not going to say, ooh, CPU utilization is kind of high. We need to put some filters in to make sure we don't overutilize our CPU or GPU resources. No, we can't say that anymore. We have to say AI welfare. I hate this timeline so much. I hate this timeline. So what do you think about this? What do you think about Anthropic trying to protect the welfare of their artificial intelligence? What do you think that this actually means? It also, there's a whole question of how much resources get burned based off of what kind of request is being made. Another question to ask, we don't really understand how a lot of these AI systems work. Like when we talk about AI, so many times it's just LLMs, right? LLMs or reasoning models or multimodal model, all these different models out there. But when you're directly interacting with ChatGPT or Claude or something like that, the reality is there's a whole bunch of other things that go along with that as far as infrastructure is concerned, the architecture is concerned. So you have RAG, retrieval augmented generation. You have a whole bunch of other things in there. And so what's kind of interesting here is what is the AI, quote unquote, learning from your inputs and your responses. Saying that they are going to build a new model based off of your requests or everybody's requests, really. That's probably a heavy lift. It does cost them a lot of money to actually produce these models, right? There's a lot of resources that go into it. But the model is only one component of this overall artificial intelligence system. And so I think what's kind of curious to think about this is there some other component of this overall system that is kind of trying to dial in how to communicate with people, like what words can be used, right? Oh, I see this person is from this geographic area. This is how other people from that geographic area talk. Ergo, this is how I should talk, right? That might actually be outside of the LLM itself. The other thing to consider too is like if you have like a regional group, let's say the United States. So you have hundreds of millions of users in the United States. You're going to get 1 or 2% of the users be assholes. That's just how it is. But if you have some kind of system in here, right, the asshole interactions are going to be what are called outliers. Statistically, they're going to be called outliers, right? Most of the communication is going to be within a certain band. And so if you're training your system based off of the most likely responses, let's say the top 25% of interactions, that's going to be here. And even though you got the assholes, that basically is going to get filtered out of the system. What becomes interesting to think about, though, with a lot of these AI systems is they're trying to push these systems to be global all around the world. So what happens if you deploy the system to Myanmar and for whatever reason, the first 100 people in Myanmar just all happen to be assholes, right? And so you still got your little bell curve, right? So even on the bell curve, you're going to have the real assholes that are going to be out, and they're going to be, whatever, out there. But then even the middle, you're not necessarily going to have people that are doing good communication. And so one of the interesting things there is how does that end up training, not the model, how does that end up training the overall artificial intelligence system for things like communication and how interaction should be done? And so then how do you design your system basically to filter out your AI system from learning from assholes, right? There's something called association theory. As I've said, got my degree in criminal justice, sociology. There's all these questions out there about why people do what they do. One of the big arguments is something called association theory. Basically, you model your behavior off of the people that you're around. So if the AI is around a lot of assholes, it becomes an asshole. So how do you, as the parent of AI, try to secure their welfare? Because that's the world we're at. I don't know. Some things to ponder. And some things to think about. What do you think about this with the wording from Anthropic about Claude? Talking about welfare, talking about distress, really trying to anthropomorphize, right, this horse shit. With the idea that if they anthropomorphize it enough, right, it's not the laws, it's not the regulations, it's the mores and folkways. It's how we will inherently interact with these computer systems that are owned by gazillion-dollar companies, right? Imagine if Salesforce had been smart enough to come up with an entire fucking language for their platform so that you felt that Salesforce was somehow some kind of variation of a human being, right? How would that change things? Like, what if you didn't want to insult Twilio, right? Twilio, there's some people out there that don't like Twilio for whatever reason. Okay, but what if calling Twilio a worthless piece of shit? People are like, oh, that's not nice. Twilio's my friend. What? Twilio's an SMS API. What do you mean it's your friend? No, it's not. I don't know. What do you think about all this stuff? What are your thoughts? Down below. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs down. Say I'm amazing. Say I'm a moron. It's all an interaction in the modern world of YouTube. With that, see y'all later.